Up next on The Reveal. A young girl suffers years of abuse at the hands of her mother's boyfriend.
But I often tell myself, I want my childhood back. But I'm stuck with the reality that I can never get it back.
Through court testimony, we hear from Sophie in her own words. Hundreds of dogs caged in cruelty.
These dogs look healthy and happy, but they've lived a life of suffering.
With a movement in Georgia to crack down on animal cruelty.
So we flew to Pennsylvania, the state once known as the puppy mill capital of the country, seeking solutions.
From our Midtown studios in Atlanta, The Reveal begins now with our multi-Emmy and National Mural Award-winning team of investigators.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Faith Abube.
And I'm Brendan Keefe. There are stories that stay with you long after the program is over. For many of you, Sophie's Nightmare is one of them.
Yeah, Sophie is our name for the young Georgia girl whose mother's boyfriend molested and impregnated her at just 10 years old. We first told you her story earlier this year here on The Reveal, and since then, 1.3 million of you have read and watched her story on 11alive.com. We've now learned her attacker will remain in prison for at least 120 years. As a result, for the first time, we're hearing from the victim in her own words.
At the age of 8, my life changed.
That's when Sophie's nightmare began in this Coweta County house. Sexually abused for 2 years.
I often tell myself, I want my childhood back. But I'm stuck with the reality that I can never get it back.
Life hasn't been the same since the young Georgia girl's mother ran with Sophie away from the Georgia Department of Family and Children's Services just to reunite with her boyfriend.
She came and told me, she said, Mama, the kids are going to my dad's for summer vacation. They're going to be gone 3 weeks. So she took the kids up and left them.
That's Sophie's grandmother. She was helping Hogansville police investigate Nicholas Thrash for sexually abusing the young girl in this house. He's the same man Sophie's mother was now forcing her daughter to live with here in Indiana.
I felt like I was going to get hurt, and even when I tried speaking up, no one would listen in my family.
Hogansville police investigator Jeff Shepard.
Mom had started then. This case, my daughter's, I don't think she's telling the truth. This case needs to be dropped. It's all a big mistake.
5 months later, Sophie was pregnant, an 11-year-old carrying her mother's boyfriend's child.
My whole life was shattered.
He is a sick individual, very sick, very, very sick. Who hurts a baby that way? Who? Monsters.
He's robbed her of her entire childhood. It's one of those cases that makes you regret because I did everything. I did, she did what she was supposed to do. She went and told somebody. She told an adult. To me, we weren't fast enough.
For the first time since Sophie's 35-year-old attacker went to prison, court documents were giving us a glimpse of how the trauma has impacted her life. It includes this victim statement she read in court in front of her attacker. To protect her identity, we're reenacting Sophie's own words in this animation.
I've questioned why someone who is supposed to love me and be my father would do this to me. And it hurts to get raped by the ones who love you. I went from a happy, positive, cheerful person to a depressed, negative, and unhappy person.
In the statement, Sophie wrote, the past 4 years have been a challenge. Running away to escape her pain, abusing drugs to express her feelings, not to mention acting out in school and getting into new unhealthy relationships.
I did these things to try to escape my own living hell.
The baby will never be normal again. She can't she don't have a childhood anymore. There was things that she's done missed out on that she can't do now. It kills me. It hurts. She asked me when she came home, could she still play with Barbie dolls? Yes, yes.
Although I can't get my childhood back. I will gain a successful teenage and adult life. Despite all of this, I am determined to gain back a life of happiness, positivity, and cheerfulness.
A young girl forced to grow up, and a mother who allowed her boyfriend to repeatedly rape her own child. Sophie says she knows she can't dwell on the past.
My favorite quote to tell myself each day is, "Life is tough, but I am tougher."
And Sophie has been in therapy trying to deal with what she's going through right now. She says her goal is to, quote, successfully overcome the past.
Faith, everyone wants to know, what about the mother?
So she's also in prison after admitting guilt in this case. She got a plea deal for a 20-year prison sentence.
Coming up on The Reveal, puppy mill problems in Georgia.
You would see dogs like cowering in the back. They didn't want any human interaction.
We travel to the nation's puppy mill capital to get solutions. Stuffed in cages, the pictures of animal cruelty are horrifying. While the standards for puppy mills did improve this year, Georgia's agriculture commissioner says he's committed to doing more. Our Reveal investigation spent months researching laws across the nation to see how other states are trying to prevent animals from being caged in cruelty.
Very few dogs in Pennsylvania get to meet the governor. They don't get to be DJ for the day or have a parade in their honor.
It was one of the most beautiful things to see this dog who had nothing and had been so unloved for her whole life to be embraced by a community.
Victoria was discarded by a breeder. Over 10 years, she gave birth to an estimated 150 puppies, but had no value when she began to suffer from the dog form of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease.
I just hadn't seen a dog who was that shut down and shy and scared and growling, and she was 91 pounds in a crate that was suitable for a 25-pound dog.
What are we doing with the postcards?
So this is the next campaign.
But Victoria quickly found a new home in the halls of the Capitol, fighting to ban dog sales at pet stores.
One time, our state was ranked 36th in our cruelty laws, and I'm so proud to say we are now within the reach of the top 10 states.
Georgia also consistently ranks in the bottom half for animal welfare. All you have to do is look at the images of hundreds of dogs rescued from 3 breeders in just 3 months to understand why. That's why The Reveal teamed up with Solutions Journalism to find out how the puppy mill capital of the country opened the door to reform.
I'm the director for the Bureau of Dog Law Enforcement.
KRISTEN DONMOYER was an inspector, or dog law warden, as they're called in Pennsylvania, when about a decade ago, the state overhauled regulations for kennels that sell 60 dogs or more to pet stores and dealers.
What would be the most stark differences to you?
It's bright. It's light. The dogs come running up to you. Before, you would see dogs like cowering in the back. They didn't want any human interaction.
He said, go left and then go down the hill. We tried to visit some of those kennels, many run by the Amish. Very few were willing to let us in.
When I was talking to him, I saw the cages up on the hill.
But this mini Rottweiler breeder welcomed our cameras as long as we kept them on the dogs. His kennels have a solid surface, something that wasn't required in Georgia until earlier this year. Before, dogs could live their entire lives in wire hutch cages, injuring their hips and paws.
What's your name?
Here, the breeder uses an invisible fence to give his adult dogs a chance to roam. But these Rottweilers also have access to an outdoor exercise area, something required by law for commercial kennels. They must also have a vet-approved exercise plan and be seen by a vet twice a year. Georgia doesn't require any of that.
For us, condition of dog is a regulation. So they're looking to make sure that dog is well groomed. There's no glaring physical problems. If you see like a droopy mouth, that can be a sign of a dental problem.
I mean, like rotting teeth?
Yeah, rotting teeth, different degrees of dental disease.
Wardens can order a 72-hour vet check if something doesn't seem right. DONMOYER says her wardens take enforcement seriously.
We recognize that we are the only entity in Pennsylvania that has the right to inspect a kennel without a search warrant.
Last year, referrals to law enforcement led 5 breeders to face charges for animal cruelty, 10 more so far this year. Wardens listed on their inspection reports, which are then posted online. But in Georgia, to get that information, you have to file an open records request.
It's the public's right to know. We deserve to know what kennels have had violations so that as a consumer, we're protected from not being duped into purchasing puppy mills.
Every year, the Humane Society reviews the inspection reports it can access to compile a list of the nation's horrible 100 dog breeders. There were 12 from Pennsylvania last year. While some see that as a sign of the problem, DONMOYER has a different take.
We could very easily just pass a kennel and say everything's great.
Instead, the breeders end up on the list because her wardens catch and record the problems. Since that 2018 list came out, 3 of those kennels have been shut down. When the changes went in place, the number of large commercial kennels in the state dropped.
It went from 350 down to, I think at one point we had about 16.
That number has now climbed to 86.
But this will be helpful.
Senator Killian says in 2008, when they debated the new regulations, dogs and corn were both just a commodity, a product grown in a largely agriculture-based state.
There's some might say this is anti-business, though. How, as a Republican, do you support a bill that's anti-business?
I'm a small business owner, and I am definitely not anti-business. This is not anti-business, this is anti-cruelty. There's a big difference.
That's why he's now helping to lead the fight for Victoria's law. Most kennels still don't give their dogs toys to play with or a soft place to sleep. Females will still spend the bulk of their lives behind the bars of a cage. But Grace Herbert has hope.
We're raising the bar a little bit higher every single time. And I was proud of my Victoria because it's all coming together around her.
Next on The Reveal, the laws are only as good as enforcement.
These people are actually having to stand in front of a judge now to respond to the things that they actually did.
A look at how Pennsylvania is tackling that challenge.
Welcome back to The Reveal. You've seen the pictures, sick and injured dogs trapped in cages.
Many wonder why it takes so long for police to act.
Pennsylvania is a picturesque state of rivers, farm fields, and houses that dot the hills.
Well, I've lived here my entire life.
But Humane law enforcement officer Jennifer Niels warns all that glitters isn't gold.
These woods, they hide so much.
Niels says the ugly truth is that down these long, winding driveways is too often an animal suffering.
We can't do our job without the community being able to look out for the animals too and reporting what they see. If they turn a blind eye, 9 out of 10 chances we'll never find them.
Like the produce delivery driver that spotted this puppy near death, covered in a foul-smelling mange. The backyard breeder, not interested in providing medical care, allowed the man to take him.
When I went to pick him up, he was in a little cardboard box in a garage, and I laid blankets out on my seat, and I said, you know, if he's gonna pass away, it's gonna be comfortably.
Are we a liquor?
But Libre lived and gave a furry face to the need for tougher animal cruelty laws.
These people are actually having to stand in front of a judge now to respond to the things that they actually did.
As lawmakers and animal groups fight to change laws, Niels says it is her job to enforce them.
Let's get this one out of here right now before it dies.
Niels grew up watching the animal cops on Animal Planet.
You have to be prepared.
Humane officers are hired by nonprofits, in her case, the Pennsylvania SPCA, but they have police authority to enforce the state's animal cruelty laws. In many communities, they are the only ones that do.
We have arresting powers, we do search warrants, we give out charges as well, we go to court.
While she does need local permission to investigate potential crimes, she is not bound by city or county jurisdictions. Niels says she's driven more than 600 miles in one day, crisscrossing communities to investigate tips. They range from a farmer accused of neglecting his injured draft horse.
I ordered veterinary care within the next 48 hours for the horse. The leg needs attention.
To a small-scale breeder.
Right here it is.
Tethering his dog 24 hours a day, a violation of Pennsylvania's law. The tips get her on property where she is always looking for other concerns. In this case, kennel structures and the sound of dogs. She makes a note to verify it's licensed.
Just to be sure, they're on the up and up.
The PSPCA says having someone independent that is dedicated to nothing but animal cruelty is important.
The animal is not going to provide us with information on who did what to them at that moment. And being able to make assessments based upon how the animal is acting, the physical condition of the animal, those are all things that you have to be able to consistently be trained on.
Sergeant Nicole Wilson leads the PSPCA's program. She says better training leads to better prosecution.
This year we're on track to be between 95 and 98% successful prosecutions.
That's an accomplishment.
I mean, we've only lost one case the whole year.
A recent case, an unlicensed vet debarking dogs by shoving a pipe down their throats. Neil says some breeders do it so nosy visitors won't know the dogs are there.
She would just do these procedures on dirty barn floors. It wasn't sanitary. The animals were not under anesthesia.
Already this year, the Pennsylvania SPCA has conducted more than 4,000 investigations, and along with that come hundreds of dogs that not only need shelter, but medical care.
We spend, depending on a given year, between $3 and $4 million.
It is money and resources police departments simply don't have.
Those local and state police officers don't have any place to take those animals if they seize them.
Which probably makes it less likely that they'll do anything.
It makes it very challenging for them.
The PSPCA says it is challenging for them as well.
You are dependent upon the public to feel like what you're doing is important.
Oh, yes.
This bust, a perfect example. The state cited the owners for operating an illegal kennel.
Now, what kind of dog is this?
Cane Corso.
But it is the PSPCA that will care for the dogs and press charges for keeping them in unsafe conditions.
Some of the dogs came in with upper respiratory issues, infections.
Many will have to be kept for months as evidence while the criminal case plays out in court. Wilson says donors realize animal cruelty is often linked to other crimes.
Many of our animal neglect cases also have a component of other people being neglected as well, whether it is an elderly member of the family, whether it is children within the household. When you're talking about animal fighting, you have obviously the drugs and the guns involved.
Neil says the job comes with a lot of responsibility. It is physically and emotionally exhausting.
This job, no matter how many times I've lost sleep over it, no matter how heart-wrenching it is, I don't think I could imagine myself in a different position.
So do we have anything like this in Georgia?
Some cities, mainly in the metro, do have dedicated officers, but these positions in Pennsylvania, they're multi-jurisdictional, more like our GBIs, so they can cover those areas that can't or won't enforce the state's animal cruelty laws. And those convictions count because in Pennsylvania, anyone convicted of animal cruelty is barred from operating a kennel.
And Rebecca, is Georgia interested in making any of these changes?
They are. Senator Kay Kirkpatrick is already taking a look at some of these ideas and others that have been presented to her to try to figure out just what makes sense for our state. And many of these ideas, they can be implemented without legislation. So we're waiting to see just what the Department of Agriculture decides to do.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
Thanks for watching The Reveal, the nation's only weekly local investigative show.
We'll see you next Sunday for The Reveal.